All right, so you're here to get the real story, right? You want the facts, and you don't want to wade through tons of stuff to get there.
Exactly.
Well, we hear you.
Absolutely.
Today we're diving deep, really deep, into a real estate story that just keeps coming up. Dholera.
Yeah, Dholera. It's everywhere, right? The promises, the hype, this future mega city.
But what's actually happening on the ground?
That's the question.
That's what we're here to figure out. We've got a whole pile of information here. It's about where Dholera is, how people are investing there, what investors are actually doing, how it compares to other big developments, the whole story of how Gurgaon grew, the bigger forces in the market right now. And honestly, some really important warnings if you're even thinking about putting money into this thing.
Yeah, it's important to be careful.
This is your shortcut, your express lane to really understanding Dholera.
So let's start with the basics. Where is this place, really? And what's it actually like there right now?
Okay, first thing you notice is the distance.
Yeah, the distance.
It's not just like, oh, it's a little outside of Ahmedabad.
Yeah.
We're talking 112, maybe even 115 kilometers away. That's a long way from a city, a real city.
Right, and it's not just about the kilometers. It's not like those places that just sort of spread out naturally from a city. It's not an extension of Ahmedabad, not really.
No, it's not. Plus, the land itself. It's got some issues.
Oh, yeah, some real challenges.
We're looking at a lot of wetland area, which, means waterlogging. If you want to build anything solid, if you want people to actually live there, that water's a problem, a big problem.
And then there's that thing with the air, the salinity.
Right, the salt.
It might not seem like a big deal at first, but over time, that salt eats away at things. Cars, buildings, the stuff that holds everything together.
So it's far from the city, and the land itself is fighting you every step of the way.
It's not easy.
So what about people? Is there even a community there? What about the things people need?
Well, from what we've seen, it's pretty bare bones.
Yeah.
There's almost no real infrastructure. I'm talking the basics, like schools, hospitals, the things you expect in a real town. It's basically empty. Like very few people actually live there.
Okay, so that's the background. But we've been hearing about Dholera for ages. What's the investment picture actually look like?
Ah, now that's interesting. We're seeing real estate talk about Dholera going back like 20 years.
Oh, wow, 20 years.
20 years of hype and honestly not a lot to show for it.
2 decades of promises, and it's still mostly just plans. And you know what else? It doesn't seem like the big companies, the ones that really make things happen, are rushing in.
You're right. The big industrial players, they're not exactly lining up. Our sources specifically mention that. And those are the guys who bring jobs, who really build an economy. If they're hesitant, that tells us something.
So if the big players aren't biting, what's driving the investment that is happening?
That's the thing. It seems like it's all about the future. The Dholera that could be, the potential, the dream. Not so much about what's actually there now. And it's powerful, that story. It's been going on for so long. It almost feeds itself. You see it in the marketing, right? All about what it will be, not what it is. And that can really get to people, that fear of missing out. They jump in, even though there's not much solid to stand on.
And here's where it gets really interesting. What happens to prices in these places where it's all just hype?
Well, based on what we've seen, not a lot. It can be years, like 10, even 15 years of basically flat prices.
15 years.
Yeah, no real growth. And that's a long time to wait for your investment to do something, anything.
And the way they're selling these plots of land, it's all about that future dream,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. It's all, Dholera will be a smart city, a manufacturing hub, but right now, it's just land, empty land.
Which brings up a bigger problem, the potential for just way too much supply.
Yeah, if everyone's buying based on what might happen, and then it doesn't happen, or it takes forever, you end up with tons of land, maybe even buildings, and no one to use them. It's a recipe for disaster, really.
So, far from the city, tough environment, no real development, no people, 20 years of hype, big companies staying away, and the potential for a real estate glut. That's Dholera. Let's talk about the investors. What are they thinking?
It seems like a lot of them are buying into that future vision. They're not looking at what the land is worth today, but what they hope it will be worth someday.
But real estate isn't just about owning a piece of dirt. It's about what's around it, right?
Exactly. You need a whole ecosystem. You need jobs, schools, hospitals, ways to get around. Without that, it's just a bunch of empty lots.
Which brings up a really big question. If there are no jobs, and it's so far from everything, who is actually going to live in Dholera?
That's the million-dollar question. Who are these future residents? Who's going to drive that demand that everyone's banking on?
And that's how these investments get caught up in hype. It's all about the story, not the reality.
Right. If you're not doing your homework, if you're just believing what you hear, you're setting yourself up for trouble. And honestly, it seems like this is happening all over India, not just Dholera.
That's what our sources say. It's a pattern, this speculative frenzy in places that are supposed to be the next big thing.
And it's not always based on facts. It's often just hope and hype.
Okay, so we're seeing a lot of red flags here. But let's look at some places that actually did grow. What can we learn from them?
One thing that stands out is that successful real estate developments, places like Greater Noida, New Gurgaon, Navi Mumbai, they all basically grew out from existing cities.
Yeah, they're like extensions.
Exactly. They started with a strong foundation with people, jobs, infrastructure, and they just expanded from there. It's very different from trying to build something completely new in the middle of nowhere.
And that's what Dholera is trying to do, right? It's not connected to Ahmedabad in that way.
Not at all. It's trying to be its own thing, totally separate, and that's a tough road.
Even in Gujarat, we've got examples of planned cities that haven't really taken off the way people thought they would.
You're thinking about Gandhinagar.
Yeah,
Okay.
Gandhinagar. It's a well-planned city, but it's not exactly bustling with people.
It just goes to show that even with good planning, you need more. You need people to want to live there, work there, make it their own.
And there's that example from Jaipur, too, Ajmer Road. Prices have been basically flat for years, like 15 years.
Right. Because there's no real growth there, no real economy. It's just land.
Which brings us to a fundamental truth about real estate.
What's that?
Property values go up when people can actually live and work in a place. If you don't have that, any price increases are just a mirage, just hot air.
Hmm.
Now let's talk about Gurgaon. It's a real estate success story. What can we learn from it, and how is it different from Dholera?
Well, Gurgaon didn't happen overnight. It was a slow burn, really. It grew over decades, and it was always connected to Delhi.
So being close to Delhi, being part of that economic engine, that was key for Gurgaon.
Absolutely. Delhi provided the jobs, the opportunities, the fuel for Gurgaon's growth.
And even back when Gurgaon was still pretty undeveloped, it had something that Dholera doesn't.
What's that?
Location, location, location. Even in the 80s, when it was mostly farmland, it was right next to Delhi. Dholera is out there on its own. So we're seeing a pattern here. Location matters, real economic drivers matter, and organic growth. That natural spreading out, that's what works. Let's step back now and look at the bigger market forces.
Okay. Our sources really emphasize a few things for real estate to really grow. You need real demand from people who actually want to live there, you need constant development, and you need to be close to the action, to those economic hubs.
And when those things are missing, it starts to sound a little like a bubble. A bit of that greater fool theory, right?
Yeah, that's when it gets dangerous. You're buying something not because it's worth anything now, but because you hope someone else will be dumb enough to pay even more for it later. Like imagine you're collecting those little toys just because you think someone else will want them even more than you do. It's a risky game.
And it seems like a big red flag is when you don't see the big, reputable developers moving in, when you don't see people actually living in a place.
Oh yeah, that's a huge warning sign. It means the real demand isn't there. And the smart money, those big investors, they know this. They do their homework and they go where the real opportunities are. They're not buying into hype.
This has been eye-opening. As we wrap up, what are some key things to remember, some warnings from our sources for anyone thinking about Dholera?
One thing is, don't get fooled by short-term price jumps. They don't mean anything if the fundamentals aren't there.
So prices going up for a little bit doesn't mean it's a good investment. You need to understand why they're going up.
Exactly. And to be successful in real estate, you have to think long-term. You need to understand the whole ecosystem, the jobs, the infrastructure, the community. You can't just look at a map and say, oh, that plot of land looks good.
And if those things aren't there, what happens to these speculative zones?
Honestly, they often just stay undeveloped. That dream of fast growth, of huge profits, it just doesn't come true.
So what starts as a chance to get rich quick can turn into a real headache, right? You might not make any money, and you might not even be able to sell the land when you want to.
Exactly. Buying land way out in the middle of nowhere without a solid plan for development, that's incredibly risky. You could lose your money and you could be stuck with something you can't get rid of.
So here's the bottom line on Dholera. It's far away, it's got environmental problems, there's no real development there, no one's really living there. It's been hyped for 20 years, and the big players are staying away. Doesn't look good.
Yeah, the gap between the dream and the reality is pretty huge. If you're thinking about Dholera, you need to be incredibly careful. Do your research, understand the risks, and don't just buy into the hype.
And that brings us to our final thought for you. We've looked at places that boomed and places that busted. So, what are the signs you would look for to know if a development is the real deal or just another Dholera? What would make you feel confident about putting your money in?
Yeah, think about that. What are the things that really matter?
It's about protecting yourself,
Hmm.
about making smart choices, and that starts with asking the right questions.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.